number. And I don't know what time to go
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let's take our hymn books and turn to hymn number 144. Hymn number 144, Calvary Covers It All.
Touche.
145. Burdens are lifted at Calvary.
145. Okay.
145.
Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Cast your care on Jesus today. Leave your worry and fear. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near.
Verse number 3.
Almost the Savior can see every heartache and tear. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near.
Then number 146. Blessed Calvary. 146.
is good to see each of you out tonight. You can turn around and wave at Michelle. She's online with us. So good to have her with us online. If you got here early, you heard some special music being practiced for next Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. Again, we'll have our Sunday school hour at 9:45. We're finishing up a two-part video from Answers in Genesis on did Jesus really rise from the dead? And this morning, I thought it was excellent. Just good information, a good way to defend what we know is real. We know it because we have a personal relationship with Jesus. But when you're dealing with an unbeliever, they don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. And so it was really good. I encourage you to be out for that next week. And then our Sunday morning worship service will be at its normal time, but it'll be a little more special music, lots of singing, and then we'll be looking at the resurrection in our sermon. We'll take a break from Romans chapter 12 and take a look at the resurrection. I don't think Paul would be disappointed by us doing that. So, any nibbles on the house, Doug?
Yeah, a lot of people going through, but no offers yet.
Okay. Keep Doug in your prayers as he's trying to sell his parents' home. That's challenging. A lot of work, and you put a lot of effort into it, and people come and they go, and so keep them in your prayers. Let's see. What else is going on this week? Oh yeah, back to school. I'm sorry. Jimmy, are you ready for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes one of us.
What's that?
I have school tomorrow.
You get an extra day.
We have an extra day.
Really?
Late.
So Matthew's team qualified, but we don't know if they qualified high enough to go on to the national competition. His third qualifying attempt, it flew straight, looked great, and then the parachute never came out, and it flew straight all the way down.
Oh, dear.
So probably hit the ground at 150 miles an hour and went.
Oh.
So
Well, I'm glad that was try number 3 and not try number 1. I
true.
mean, if it had happened.
Yeah, I mean, because again, they qualify because you have to have two successful qualifying, and they had 2. They were hoping to improve on the score with the third one, and now he's probably going to be working late tonight because their presentation is due at 11:59 tonight. And
Ooh.
so, but he's coming along. Then the team has a video that they have to put together, but thankfully that's not going to just rest on Matthew's shoulders. He's got somebody else that's going to do the bulk of that. So yeah, pray for them as it comes together. We have no idea if the score that they got is going to be high enough to get into the finals. It's a tough competition. So let's see. I don't know. I guess let's go into our study. So we ended last week in Isaiah chapter 26, and I stopped at verse 19. And the reason I stopped is because there's a paragraph break there. And my credit to the editors that put in chapter breaks and verse marks and everything like that, because they're so helpful. And then, you've got, in my Bible and maybe in yours, they've got little headings above each chapter that can help you kind of get an idea of what's going on. But this was one of those that if I were doing it, I might have bumped it into chapter 27. But that's okay, because if I got this one right, there would have been a lot of other ones that I didn't get right. And so I'm not criticizing or complaining, but chapter 26 ends on, it's just a really positive, powerful thing about what God's going to do with Israel in the millennial kingdom. And they're going to be singing, and it is one of the most confident demonstrations of the resurrection in the Old Testament. The other very powerful, strong one, of course, would be Job. But a lot of times talking about the resurrection, it was a little bit less than clear because they didn't understand how it was going to work. But you have Isaiah with a confidence that not only will the Old Testament saints be resurrected from the dead, but let's see, where was I going with this? Oh, yes, verse 19. Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing. And so, he had a confidence that he would be resurrected. And so then we came to verse 20, and that's where we broke right there. And we ended, and Doug made a comment about 20 and 21. And it's a passage that's used in a lot of prophetic teaching about a topic, again, that's not real well defined or clear how it's going to take place. And that is what happens to death and hell. What happens to Hades? And we've got some idea of that. But let me actually get out of chapter 27. Let me get back to chapter 26 here. But how does it tie in with that? And this is also a passage that, so in chapter 26, verse 20, this is also a couple of verses that I think often is taken out of context and tried to apply to the church. And part of the reason that happens is if you go back in the old commentaries, say prior to, 1948 or so, why might they try and apply this to the church?
Well, because national Israel wasn't a nation at that time.
There was no national Israel. There were Jews scattered all around the world, but there was no national Israel. And so you look at that and say, well, who's this applying to? And so what they would do is they would kind of combine verse 19 and 20 and 21 into this one context, and they would try to apply it to the rapture. And I agree that if I die before the return of Jesus Christ, my body's going to be resurrected at the rapture. But that's not who this is talking about, because you go back, chapter 24, chapter 25, chapter 26, it's all talking to Israel. It's not talking to the church. And so for Isaiah to be talking about Israel, the church, Israel, that doesn't fit in. And I realize that Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, does do some jumping around, but not like that. And so, again, I think there's a distinct break between chapter 19, or verse 19 and verse 20. We know that there's a paragraph marker there. So it's a new paragraph. And it actually leads in, I think, to chapter 27 rather than summarizing or completing chapter 26. So with that in mind, let's take a look at verse 20 and 21. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. And so a lot of pre-trib rapture people, that would be me, by the way, but a lot of pre-trib rapture people, I said that's me. That means I'm pre-trib rapture, not that I'm agreeing with what I'm going to state right now. Let me just clarify that. They look at this and say, well, verse 21, the Lord's coming to punish the inhabitants, but my punishment has already been paid for. So this can't apply to me, so this must be talking about the church having been raptured. Well, let's back up. Let's take a look at verse 20. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors. By the way, those who go for this, that this is a rapture passage, talk about, Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us, and mansions and so on. And so they're saying, enter thou into your heavenly mansion. Well, it sounds nice. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. And so Isaiah is saying to the people, you need to go into shelter, your house. You need to close the doors, and you need to wait until the indignation, the wrath, is past. Can you think of some times in Israel's history where they did that? They went behind a closed door.
Exodus, Passover.
Exactly. In the Passover, you put the blood on the door, and then you go inside, you close the door,
That's what
and
this sounds like too.
it does. Yeah. Yeah. You can see the parallel. Is there another time in, I don't know, maybe Genesis where they went behind a closed door while God's wrath was poured out on the earth?
In the ark.
In the ark. Yeah. You know what they didn't do?
Open the door.
Open the door midway through. They were sheltered from God's wrath. He flooded the entire world. He destroyed every person other than those 8 people safe on the ark inside the door. And so just keeping those parallels, and Doug, I think you're exactly right. This is nearly almost a word for word parallel with Exodus and the Passover. Come, my people, enter into thy chambers and shut thy doors about thee. So what could it be referring to in light of, oh, by the way, another one I was going to mention, Battle of Jericho. Who was behind a closed door? Rahab. Yeah. If she and her family had ignored that and gone out into the city, what would have happened? They'd have been killed. They would have experienced God's judgment. And so, what do you think this is referring to?
I hear a lot of people think it refers to in the tribulation, but that's exactly opposite of what Jesus told us to do. Jesus said, "Don't come into your house and grab your stuff and get it, flee."
So
I've heard a lot of people think that this is sheltering themselves in the tribulation,
okay,
but they're commanded to flee, not even take.
and I agree. Give me then what do you think fits?
I'm not sure. I really didn't have time to look for it, but it's supposed to be connected to 28 verse 15. I've heard a connection there, but I haven't really sat down and tried to figure it out. Because they're supposed to shelter themselves for the overflowing scourge. That's the result of one of their covenants that they make with death and hell.
Let's. I haven't looked at that either, Doug. But where did they go when they didn't return to their homes? They fled where? Into the wilderness. A lot of people think it may have been Petra, to a place of safety and security if they had gone to their homes. So I think it can fit there. But I will be totally honest with you.
Sheltering as in being in Petra in the wilderness.
Right,
Okay.
right. This is one of those times. I'll give you a little personal history. When I was in my Bible college and I was taking my homiletics course, my preaching course, I got to preach on out of Daniel. We were assigned passages, and I got to teach on the section describing the statue that they all were to pray before. And I did some study on it and some research, and I said a lot of commentaries think that this indicates this kingdom and this indicates that kingdom and so on. And I went through all that, and then when I finished and my teacher was critiquing me, he said, if you'd read the next chapter, it explains each of those. That's the case here. I'm not into chapter 28 at all yet, Doug.
I just want to say that prophecy guys like Bill Salas, they're linking those together.
That's interesting. I'll definitely explore that, but I have not.
What I get out of 20 is the main message in 20 is you can't hide from, if you're guilty, you can't hide. You'll be dealt with, you'll be judged. That's what I get out of that.
And looking at 21, it kind of continues that thought. But again, for those who try to apply it to the rapture, it doesn't fit there, or to the church. But God does shelter and protect his people, the Jews, during this time. And so I think it certainly could fit there. What we can draw from it very easily is the reason why is not because of man's judgment, because we see that in the next verse, not because of the Antichrist, not because of reaction against God's people, but the indignation, the wrath is from who?
From God.
From God. It's a little bit like when the children of Israel were facing the plagues, and the plagues would hit everywhere except for
Land
the land of Goshen. And so again, I'm going to be excited to explore a little further chapter 28, verse 15. But you definitely would want to be following God's leading at this time. And so the indignation is God's wrath being poured out on the earth. Verse 21 then goes on to say, "For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity." God's wrath and his great wrath in the second half of the tribulation period. And then we come to that phrase, "The earth also shall disclose her blood and shall no more cover her slain." This is an interesting passage. So God's going to judge, and part of that judgment is the earth will disclose her blood and no more cover her slain. So the question is, who shed the blood, and who are the slain? Give me first impressions.
Well, I was reminded of when Cain slew Abel, and God said, "His blood calls to me from the earth." It runs in my mind that he kind of buried him so that, where is he? Oh, I don't know. They didn't know anything about that. But in that case, the earth covered his sin. But of course, that didn't work too well with God, because he pretty much knew what happened. But I'm just saying, when the earth shall disclose her blood, and then you can't cover up, you can't hide what you've done.
So
The
Genesis
people
4.
that you slay, it'll be obvious.
Genesis 4,
Yeah.
verses 10 and 11. Let's go ahead and turn there. All right. Genesis chapter 4. Let's actually back up to verse 9. "And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not." What was that?
A lie.
That was a blatant lie. "Am I my brother's keeper?" There's an excuse. So a lie and an excuse. "And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand." And it goes on to say the consequences. And so there has been a lot of iniquity over the millennia that people think have been covered up. Cold cases. That's a hot topic at the library. I mean, actually, anything dealing with murder. I'm not quite sure of the fascination, but cold cases are a hot topic. Where people go back and they dig into things that happened 10, 20, 50, 100, 150 years ago, and they try to determine, is the evidence there to pin who did it. Jack the Ripper, that comes up every once in a while, and every time it comes up, it's a different person than they think it really was. At this time, all of that evidence is going to be displayed. There isn't going to be any covering up. What you thought was buried in the past is going to be revealed. And so all of this is taking place. Let me get back to Isaiah. All of this is taking place as part of God's wrath, part of God's judgment. And then we come to chapter 27 and verse 1. "In that day." So we've seen that phrase over and over again. "In that day," chapter 26, verse 1, chapter 25, verse 1, No, I don't spot it. But in that day, and we discussed what is in that day. Well, in that day, of course, involves the second coming of the Lord, but it also involves the events surrounding it. So the rapture, the tribulation, the second coming of the Lord, the entrance into the millennial kingdom, all of this is in that day, with the specific day being, I believe, the establishment of the millennial kingdom. But based on context, it can be the whole series of events that culminates in that. And so chapter 27, in that day, the events leading up to the millennial kingdom, the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. So let's break this down a little bit. The Lord with his sore and great and strong sword. What is a sore sword?
I have hard.
Okay, and that's actually it. What do you do with metal to make it harder? Yeah, you temper it.
Or I was gonna say alloy.
Yeah, alloys. And they knew alloys back then. Certainly not some of the alloys that we have, but yeah, you temper it, you harden it. And so with his hard and great and strong sword, he's going to punish Leviathan. And then it describes Leviathan, the piercing serpent, the crooked serpent, the dragon that is in the sea. Who is this Leviathan? And I think we know the answer, but let's look at some of the historical context also. So the Canaanites had a creation myth. Emphasis on myth, because most, if not all, civilizations have stories about creation. It's always interesting to look at them because there's similarities. Why would there be similarities?
We're people.
It really happened.
Yeah, there really was a creation, but as it was told over the years, and especially as it was shared by corrupt people corrupted by sin, what happens to them? It's the old game of telephone or gossip.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, gets distorted into all sorts of strange things, but there's lots of similarities in it. And one of those similarities is an adversary. Well, the Canaanites had a creation myth, and part of that myth, Lotan, was destroyed by, and I don't remember the first part, but Baal. This was a specific Baal who was the storm god. And so there was a confrontation between Lotan and the storm god, and Baal destroyed Lotan. Any idea what Lotan means?
Serpent.
Sea
That's
monster.
What's that?
Sea monster.
How about coiled? But the imagery was a coiled serpent, and specifically a coiled sea serpent. And that's the description we have here. Now, where I ran into problems as I was doing some research, this was internet search, I will say that, not the commentaries that I normally use, but I was doing some background research on it. And they're saying things like, Isaiah was simply quoting from the Canaanite mythology. No, actually Canaanite mythology was a distortion of reality, which is that Satan rebelled against God. By the way, when did he do it? Well, I believe after creation, shortly after man was placed in the garden, Satan rebelled. Some point after that, he tempted Adam and Eve. They chose to sin, to disobey God, and sin entered into the world through that. But nonetheless, that was the reality that the Canaanite myth was based on. It's not that Isaiah was looking at mythology and saying, oh, the Leviathan. He was looking at, because God's speaking through Isaiah, he was saying, this is what happened. And God is going to punish Leviathan. He's going to slay the dragon. So let's look at some references. So if you have your Bibles handy, I'm going to start up here with Jerry. And would you look up, I have too many notes up here. Would you look up for me Job chapter 3, verse 8? Job
3:8.
verse 8. Joan, if you'll look up Job, let's see. Nope, I'm going to do that one. Look up Psalm 74, verse 14. Psalm 74, verse 14. Beth, Genesis chapter 3, 1 through 5. Cindy, Revelation 13, 1. And Tom, Psalm 104, verse 26.
Pastor, would you give me mine
Sure.
again?
Psalm 74, 14. Psalm 74, 14.
Where's Job?
Right
Just before Psalms.
Yeah. Go to Psalms. And turn
Oh,
left.
I'm going the wrong way.
And so
Oh,
what
I
we're
see it.
looking at is the Bible talking about Leviathan, which is mentioned in multiple places. Serpent, crooked serpent, which by the way could mean coiled serpent, and dragon. And let's see what the
You
Bible
said
has.
3:8, right?
Would you give me mine again?
Sure. Psalm 74,
Okay.
and then verse 14.
Got it.
Okay, so let's let Jerry read hers, and we'll go to you next, Joan.
Let them curse it that curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning.
That doesn't even sound close. I'm not going to blame that on you. I'll blame that on me who did this late at night or early in the day or wrong time of day or something. Yeah, it sure looks like Job 3:8 there. Bethany, will you look up Leviathan and Job?
Job 41:1.
Well, Job 41 is where I'm heading. So we definitely want Job 41.
That's the only place I find Leviathan in Job.
How interesting. I'm sure there was a reason I had that down there. Okay, well, that's all right. Joan, would you read for us from Psalms
74:14.
74:14?
Thou didst break the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be food to the people inhabiting the wilderness.
Okay, so Leviathan was something that would not normally be broken, but God was able to.
And it says heads of, as though Leviathan heads.
Which is actually very interesting because when the Antichrist is described in Revelation, it's what? Yeah, multi-headed. Okay, let me read Job 41. Canst thou draw a Leviathan with an hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? Canst thou put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto thee? And it continues on down. Verse 7, canst thou fill his skin with barbed iron, or his head with fish spears? So Leviathan was something that was an uncontrollable, untamable marine animal. What could it be? People have tried to discuss it over the years. A what? A plesiosaur. It could be.
I never heard that.
Some tried to say the Nile, a crocodile from the Nile. But it was a great beast, one that couldn't be handled, couldn't be tamed by man. I have one of our story hour kids is fascinated by the megalodon.
We did a whole shark month with the little kids, and I learned a whole bunch about sharks.
Okay, so Genesis 3, 1 through 5, go ahead and read that for us.
Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes will be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil.
Okay, so we have the lie being presented to Adam and Eve by the serpent. We've talked many times about that serpent. Could it really, did it speak verbally? Sounds like it. Adam and Eve didn't sound surprised at it. Maybe animals talk, or maybe our adversary Satan indwelled it. We don't know exactly, but that's where the lie entered in. Revelation 13:1.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
So what does that sound like?
Pretty scary.
Yeah, something not
Big
easily.
and not easily controlled, I think.
The Hydra that had 7 heads.
Yeah, every time you cut one off,
Okay.
2 more grow.
And then Tom, Psalm 104, verse 26. And listen carefully to the location here.
There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein.
Okay. Maybe I should have had you back up. What's the preceding verse?
So is this great and wide sea. Therein are things creeping, innumerable, both small and great beasts.
Okay, well, once again, we see the mention of the Leviathan. So what we see is a fair consistency with serpents, Leviathans, dragons. There may be an overlap between them, but in that day, what is the Leviathan that will be destroyed? Or who is that, the Leviathan?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There has to be a connection between God's wrath and conquering and the wicked versus they're talking about serpents. Now,
So in Revelation especially, Satan is called that old serpent, that old dragon.
okay?
So he's going to be conquered during the millennial reign. Where will he be?
In the lake of fire.
Be bound in
In what did you say, Doug?
the pit.
Yeah, in the pit. So he's going to be conquered during the millennial reign to be released for one final attempt.
So basically, we're talking about when we talk serpent, we're talking wicked, the devil, that kind of thing.
Specifically the devil.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
that clarifies it.
I think I might have found the verse that you in Job that you were
Okay.
talking about. Because a different word is
Makes
used,
sense
but
now.
it's the same word, Leviathan, translated everywhere else. Job 3:8. Let them curse it that curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning. And mourning is Leviathan. They're ready to rouse up Leviathan.
That's probably what happens when you use a concordance and cross-reference it. The pattern I was trying to establish is there's a consistency from Genesis all the way through of the serpent, the Leviathan, the dragon representing our adversary. And so he's going to be punished. He's going to be slain, certainly taken out of circulation, out of operation. And then verse 2, we get a radical change. So chapter 27, verse 2, in that day, so the same time period, sing ye unto her a vineyard of red wine. So we have another song. And we've already seen that in both chapter 25 and chapter 26. There's songs of rejoicing. And here's the song of the vineyard of red wine. Again, the day of the Lord, the specific day is the establishment of the millennial kingdom. What leads up to that is the tribulation period, chapters 20 or verses 20 and 21 of 26 and verse 1 of 27. And now we're in a segment that is during the millennial reign of Christ. And so we have a vineyard of red wine. And this is a reoccurring theme. But do you remember early on in our study in Isaiah chapter 5, do you remember the husbandman who prepared a vineyard, who set up a watchtower. Does that ring some bells? Let's
Yeah.
turn back there to Isaiah chapter 5. And let's take a look down through there, because this is also discussing Israel and a vineyard, but with a totally different outcome. Now will I sing to my well-beloved, a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved have a vineyard in a very fruitful hill, and he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof. Remember what he did with the stones?
Made the fence.
Made the fences and planted it with the choicest vine. We're out in the middle of this farmer's field launching Matthew's team's rocket, and we needed to angle the launch tower just a little bit. You know what we got to do it?
Rocks.
Rocks, because
It's
there's
spring.
plenty of them. That's right.
They grow over the winter.
Yes, they do.
They sure do.
Those little pebbles that the farmers plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, they grow
Yeah.
into big rocks.
Anyway, so he planted with the choicest vine and built a tower in the midst of it and made a wine press therein. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. And remember, bitter and small. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could I have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes. Now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down, and I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no more rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plant. And he looked for judgment, behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. And so this is talking about God working through the nation of Israel, and the nation of Israel, instead of producing fruit, sharing God's blessing, Genesis chapter 12, instead of doing that, they just produced bitterness. That was then. Now is now. Verse 2. In that day sing ye under a vineyard of red wine. I, the Lord, do keep it. I will water it every moment, lest any hurt it. I will keep it night and day. God's going to look over it. God's going to protect it. That's what he also did in chapter 5. But the results are going to be different. Verse 4. Fury is not in me. Who would set the briars and thorns against me in battle? I would go through them. I would burn them together. So no longer is he angry at Israel. And who's going to attack them? Who's going to stop him from doing what he wants with the nation of Israel? Verse 5. Or let him take hold of my strength, that he may make peace with me, and he shall make peace, and he shall make peace with me. So during the millennial kingdom, where God is watering and nurturing the nation of Israel, who's going to set up briars and thorns against him from having his way? No one. He'll burn them together. So if you rebel against God during the millennial kingdom, he'll judge you right then and there. Or instead of attacking God, let the Gentiles take hold of my strength, that he may make peace with me, and he shall make peace with me. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 16. Isaiah chapter 16. Isaiah chapter 16. And let's pick up at verse 4. Let mine outcast dwell with thee, Moab. Be thou a covert to them from the face of the spoiler. For the extortioner is at an end, the spoiler ceases. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. And in mercy shall thy throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment and hastening the righteousness. And then it talks about the pride of Moab. But then later on in chapter, let's see, where do I have it written down? I don't. But God is going to make peace with the Moabites during the millennial reign. And remember why he chose Moab as representative?
Well, they're kind of cousins.
Yeah, and neighbors.
Yeah.
You just look across the Jordan River, and there's Moab. And so they're going to have a choice in the millennial reign. They can attack God, and he'll burn them. He'll judge them. or they can establish peace with God, and he'll establish peace with them. Verse 6, he shall cause them that come out of Jacob to take root. Israel shall blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. So interesting note, I believe this commentary was written by somebody who is amillennial. What's amillennial?
Don't
Yeah.
believe in the millennium.
Okay. And not so much that they don't believe in the millennium, but what?
I think we're in it.
Yeah, we're in it. Just pick up your newspaper and read the headlines about
Yeah.
yeah. But the point he made, do you know, and you will know because of who we're talking about, but do you know who the third largest producer of fruit and flowers in the world is right now?
Israel?
Israel.
Really?
Israel provides fruit throughout Europe. They're the deserts are blooming, and it's going to be even better in the millennium. They're going to be fruitful, but I think this is more than just oranges and apples. This is talking in every way they're going to blossom and bud. Take your Bibles, turn back to Genesis chapter 49. Keep your finger there in Isaiah. Genesis chapter 49 and verse 22. All right, and this is Jacob as he's blessing his sons. And he says in verse 22, Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. If you go back to Genesis chapter 12 and the covenant between God and Abraham, in Genesis chapter 12, and you probably know where I'm heading with this, but we'll pick up at verse 1. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. I think this is referring to the fulfillment of that. The ultimate fulfillment of that is the millennial kingdom, where all nations are blessed through God's relationship with Israel. And then he switches gears a little bit, the Lord speaking through Isaiah, and he asks a question. Hath he, God, smitten him as he smote those that smote him? Okay, so puzzle through that for a moment. Hath he, God, smitten him as he smote those that smote him? So who is the him?
So we're back in Isaiah.
Yes, Isaiah 27, verse 7.
Oh, 7. Okay.
Little paragraph mark there. He's switching gears.
Yeah.
Hath he smitten him as he smote those that smote him? Who's the him? I give you a hint. The he is God. Hath God smitten him as God smote those that smote him?
Well, we just read that if you are a friend to the nation of Israel, God will bless you.
Okay.
And if you are an enemy to the nation of Israel, God will be your enemy. So that makes me think here, he smote those who smote him. That him would be Israel.
Good analysis. I think you're right. Hath God smitten Israel as God smote those that smote Israel? And so he's asking the question to the Israelites, has God dealt as harshly with you as he did with, let's go through those burdens.
Yeah.
You know, we could do the big circle. No, because God always preserved a remnant. And remember, I think it was last week, might have been the week before, those that died then aren't even remembered in history. Guess what? Israel is. Israel's still an ongoing nation, an ongoing concern. And so has God smitten you as God smote the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, the Moabites? Walk your way around the circle. Syria. And it goes on to say, or is he slain? Is Israel slain? because it's actually still, I think, maybe referring to the vineyard, but, or is he slain according to the slaughter of them that are slain by him? No, God has not treated Israel the same way that he treated those that attacked. He's always preserved. He's chastened them, he's disciplined them, but he's always preserved them. And then we come to Isaiah 27, verse 8, and this was a tough one for me. In measure, when it shooteth forth, now keeping the picture of the vineyard, in measure, when it shooteth forth, thou wilt debate with it. He stayeth his rough wind in the day of the east wind. And I'm going to continue on. By this, referring back to verse 8, therefore shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. I struggled with this. So the simple thing is you just go to the commentaries and they explain it.
Did they explain it?
Not to my understanding.
No.
So I wrestled with it a lot. I came up with a couple of possibilities. The most common thread in the commentaries is that this is talking about the shooting forth of the branch of the vine from the main root. The shooting forth of it is the captivity. When the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, took them captive. And that then purged the iniquity of Jacob. Okay. Let's look at, let me make sure I have the right reference here, because I haven't been doing real well tonight. I'll be there in a moment. Yeah. Isaiah chapter 50 talks about God divorcing the nation of Israel. Actually, not divorcing them. Let me read it. Isaiah 50, this is verse 1. Thus saith the Lord, where is the bill of your mother's divorcement, whom I have put away? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Behold, for your iniquities have ye sold yourselves, and for your transgressions is your mother put away. And so we know that the nation of Israel was conquered by Babylon, taken into captivity. The Assyrians have already destroyed the 10 northern tribes. And the result then was, through God's plan 150 years earlier, actually thousands of years earlier, but God's plan was that they would return to the land a changed people. And they were. They still had issues, but they did return. And so that's one possibility. I came up with another possibility, and I want you to turn with me to Isaiah 11. So let me read, as you're turning to Isaiah 11, let me reread this verse to you. In measure, when it shooteth forth, thou wilt debate with it. He stayeth his rough wind in the day of the east wind. The east wind was considered the most treacherous wind in that area. By this, therefore, shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. Somebody read for me chapter 11, verse 1.
Which verse?
Verse 1.
And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots.
And who ultimately is that going to be?
Jesus.
Jesus. Interestingly, the word, let me see. Yeah. Therefore cometh forth a rod, that is can also be translated as shoot.
As well.
A shoot. A shoot coming off of a new growth coming off of a branch. So could verse 8 be, in measure when it shooteth forth, be the fulfillment of Isaiah 11, verse 1? And as a result of that, he stayeth his rough wind in the day of the east wind. And again, the east wind we've seen before in Isaiah, but also Job and Psalms talk about the east wind. So to stay it is to stop it. And by this, therefore, shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. Because was the iniquity of Jacob purged by their captivity?
Well, they kept sinning, so it doesn't
they
seem
did.
like it would.
And the
really take
results
care
of
of it.
this in verse 9, And this is all the fruit to take away his sin. When he maketh all the stones of the altar as chalk stones. Now, which altars is this? Well, we see that because it then talks about the groves and the images. The altar as chalk stone that are beaten in sunder. What's chalk stone?
Well, if it's a stone made out of chalk, it'd be pretty soft and easy to beat into powder.
Yeah, break it down pretty easily. It can be broken down, beaten into, and so this brings about whatever this is that's purging, whatever it is that's shooting forth, brought about a total change to where there's no more idol worship, no more idolatry. Now, when does that take place? The millennium. After the finished work of Jesus Christ, the church age that we're in now God's wrath is poured out upon the world in the 7 years of the tribulation period. And after that, Israel is restored in the position God designed it to be in, no more to worship after the false gods of the countries around them. Matter of fact, the countries around them are going to be doing what?
Worshiping the true God.
Coming to Jerusalem, coming to the temple. We're out of time. I'm going to stop right there. Again, the most common thread in the commentaries is it's talking about the Babylonian captivity. I don't know. I don't see that as completely matching, but I don't know that my theory does either. Questions or comments about what we've looked at tonight? All right, next week we'll finish up next week we don't have Bible study, Sunday night Bible study. In 2 weeks, we'll come back to finish chapter 27, and then 3 weeks we'll tackle chapter 28, and Doug, I will do some research into verse 15. See what we can discover. So next Sunday school, we're going to finish up, did Jesus really rise from the dead? I encourage you to be here. It's just good factual information when we're given a reason for the hope that is within us. Special music during the worship service, lots of singing, and then fellowship time in the fellowship hall. Sounds like we're going to have a good group, maybe 20 or more. So it should be a good time of fellowship. Let's close in prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Our Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for this study. There's parts of Isaiah that are hard. Father, I thank you, though, that we can see some common themes throughout it. One is that ultimately justice will be served. Another one is that you're in control. The third one is remind us that you keep your promises. Father, I thank you for those things. I thank you that even when we don't fully understand it, we can have a confidence that what you're doing is what's right. And we can place our trust in you. Father, I thank you that you can be a shelter for us, even as you will be a shelter for the Jews during the tribulation period. There's times where we need to enjoy your shelter, a chance to recover from the onslaught of our adversary, the onslaught of this world. Father, thank you for the time of fellowship we've shared tonight, the time of singing songs of praise to you. And Father, now send us back out into the world refreshed and encouraged, looking for opportunities to share Jesus with others. We just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Quick prayer request. Tom shared with me this morning, and I forgot to share it with you. Joel Anderson, that's Pastor Anderson's son, his wife's grandfather passed away this past week. And so if you can keep the family in your prayers. So again, this is Joel Anderson's wife's grandfather. So just pray for the family. All right.
Yeah.
With that, you're dismissed.